Chapter 3. Distinguish between won't, I choose not to, and can't, I am not able to. Is a zebra white with black stripes or black with white stripes? Ask 10 people or pull up 10 websites and you'll get 12 opinions. Zebras give the impression of being white with black stripes because the stripes end without joining under the belly and around the legs. But the hide of the zebra is actually black. It's a lesson from Mother Nature that things are not always as they appear on the surface. And so it is with many of the complexities of autism. How do we distinguish between what our child won't do, chooses not to, and what he can't do, is not able to? Many won't allegations about our kids are behavior complaints. He won't comply. She won't listen to instructions. He won't stop rapping his knuckles, walking away in mid-sentence, or other odd, inexplicable, or narrowly focused actions. We adults assume comprehension, functional and social, assume that because he did something once, he can repeat the behavior without further prompting, practice, or reinforcement, under all circumstances. As adults do with so many challenges our children face, we make all sorts of assumptions about knowledge and ability without stopping to consider that our assumptions may be the root of the problem at hand. Won't and can't are not interchangeable. Won't, the contraction of will not, implies premeditation, intent, and deliberate behavior. Can't, the contraction of can not, acknowledges that a behavior is not a matter of choice, but attributable to lack of ability, knowledge, or opportunity. The distinction between can't and won't is clear-cut, because where behavior is concerned, there are two absolutes. All behavior is communication. All behavior happens for a reason. Today's psychology recognizes varied motives for behavior: bids for attention, sensory seeking or avoidance, feelings of powerlessness, testing boundaries, experimentation at different stages of cognitive and social development, explorations into independence, and many others. Some may be the direct result of challenges arising from autism. Others may be developmental stages that all children, autism or not, pass through. The next time you catch yourself saying, "he won't," stop and evaluate your child's behavior in light of the following more common reasons. See if you start recognizing situations where can't is a more accurate description than won't. Resistant, avoidant behavior. Your child or student doesn't know how to do what you've asked, or it's unpleasant for him for a reason you don't perceive. It's natural for a child or adult to want to evade an unpleasant task. Pinpointing the source of the resistance is necessary to resolving it. Your essential role is now behavior detective. You may be surprised at how often lack of ability, information, or opportunity plays into your child's or student's reluctance or refusal to do what you have asked. Think close to 100% of the time. Possible reasons. Get coffee, we'll be here a while. He didn't hear your request, or only pieces filtered through to his brain. He doesn't comprehend the instructions or the request. Doesn't know or understand the rules or process or routine. Doesn't have the fine or gross motor skills to accomplish the task. The behavioral or academic expectation is too high. The activity is sensory overwhelming. The task causes physical discomfort, or the request comes at a time when he is hungry or too tired to comply. In other words, he can't. On top of that, he dreads failure and criticism. In his concrete, black and white, all-or-nothing perspective, errors and successes come in two sizes, huge or non-existent. This breeds pervasive stress and anxiety in him. Further, have you offered choice or flexibility in how and when he must accomplish the task? Has he had any say in how he could best tackle it? Avoidance behaviors frequently stem from lack of comprehension and fear of failure. Constructing opportunities within which children experience success motivates them to try, to work, to strive. Attention-seeking behavior. Your child wants adult or peer attention. The good news is he wants to interact. The bad news is that inappropriate attention-seeking behavior frequently disrupts classrooms and family routine. If you're exasperated because he won't stop, get out the deer stalker again and consider, does he know how to ask for attention or help in an appropriate manner? It's one of autism's nasty catch-22s that the child must be carefully taught about social interaction, but at the same time lacks the understanding of when and how to ask for what he needs. He needs specific instruction and examples to make requests such as, "I need help," or "I don't understand this." And he needs emotional bolstering while he learns to summon not just the words or actions, but the courage to ask. While teaching him to ask for attention appropriately, also consider whether he may not get sufficient adult attention to achieve what's expected of him. Similarly, does he receive adequate and appropriate attention from peers to validate his self-worth? Does he draw more attention from you for his undesirable deeds than he does for the more suitable behaviors? Is the amount of praise he hears from you greater than the amount of complaining? A 4-to-1 praise-criticism ratio is widely advocated by educators and psychologists. Do you unknowingly reinforce the behaviors you want to quell? If you ignore her when she's not being disruptive, but take immediate notice when the spitballs sail or she uses the sofa as a trampoline, she's gotten the attention she wanted, and you've succeeded in reinforcing her inappropriate behaviors. Remember our maxim: all behavior is communication. It applies to you too. Self-regulation. As we discussed in Chapter 2, your child unconsciously attempts to calm or alert over- or understimulated senses to reduce anxiety or discomfort. This may be the underlying organic cause of a behavior, and until we help the child through sensory intervention and teach him sensory strategies to use, such behavior falls into the "I can't" category. Entertainment/fun. Your child finds a particular behavior amusing to himself or others. While children with autism or Asperger's often have a more rigid or reduced sense of play than typical kids, they can also be resourceful at entertaining themselves. It's a grand skill, as any mother of an "I'm bored, there's nothing to do" kid will tell you. If your child repeats the diverting behaviors when others are not present, it may be his way of telling you he wants to play, but has neither adequate skill nor the opportunity to interact with other children. The door is open, coach. Set up a game plan. Control. Your child is attempting to order or reorder his environment. When so little is within their control, many children on the autism spectrum experience life as a continuous battle to hold on to whatever power they do have to direct their lives. Their attempts to control may be overt, confrontational, aggressive behavior that looks like defiance, or they may be passive-aggressive. They silently or covertly continue to do what they wish, regardless of attempts at redirecting behavior. Your daily life as a typical adult flows in a perpetual, minute-by-minute stream of choices. You take for granted both the array of choices you have and your ability to act upon them. Such reasoning and decision-making skills are much more limited in your child with autism. What appears to be controlling behavior on your child's part can also be seen as evidence of her ability to think independently and affirm her own wants and needs. Channel these qualities as you work with her to instill decision-making skills and increase the number of choices and opportunities for success in her world. It's too easy to get into a power struggle with a child who seems hell-bent on having things his way. But always remind yourself of your goals for this child before you respond. Is your goal to bend the child to your will, make him respect your authority, and force his compliance at all costs? Ask yourself if that really is a win. Or is the goal to acclimate him to socially acceptable behavior in a manner that enables him to grow as a person and take his place as a citizen of the world? As a young child, Bryce had a passive-aggressive manner of letting us know when he had had enough of a social situation. He would tell us, once. If we did not end the outing within a time frame reasonable to him, less than 5 minutes, he would simply turn and go. Depending upon where we were, you can imagine how dangerous this could be. I still break out in hives remembering those times, his little back disappearing down the street or into the crowd. We quickly learned that when Bryce said, "I'm ready to go," that meant non-negotiable, arrivederci time. Was he pulling our strings? Were we letting him run the show? Not by a long shot. He was telling us that he was approaching his meltdown point. We respected that, ungrudgingly, and adapted our plans accordingly. Our goal was that Bryce be able to handle social settings in a manner that would allow us to do things as an entire family. To accomplish that goal, we had to learn to listen and heed his verbal and nonverbal warnings when he reached the limits of his current abilities. We beat numerous hasty retreats in those days, but over time, Bryce gained language, confidence, sensory tolerance, and social skills. We did it his way, and by his teens, we had a go-anywhere young man who got around town on his own, and to celebrate his high school graduation, traveled across the country solo. Retribution. Your child wants to retaliate for treatment perceived as unfair. I include this one here because it's most likely a motivation you can rule out. He's doing it to get back at me. Let it go, my friend. The concept of fair or unfair requires the ability to perceive the motivations and feelings of others, something children with autism notoriously lack. What's more, planning and carrying out revenge requires advanced executive skills coupled with a level of motor planning beyond the abilities of most children on the spectrum. Keep looking. Your answer isn't here. Once we understand how can't shapes our child's behavior, we must turn the word on ourselves, because can't is a two-faced monster. Can't comes in two flavors, and it sits on a very different place on the tongue when can't comes from you rather than your child. You, as a capable adult, do not get off the hook with can't. As we have defined it, can't reflects the lack of knowledge, ability, and opportunity. I am the first to acknowledge that autism demands a huge learning curve, but we're talking at a deeper level here, about playing the hand you've been dealt. It's not about backing away from difficulty and challenge in the face of your own insecurities. You didn't get a choice about the nature part of your child, but the nurture part grants you choices without number. Your child will be an expression of his environment. What vibe does he get from you? Are you a can-do adult? One of the greatest shifts I've seen since entering the autism community is in the proactive attitudes and participation of dads and stepdads, grandfathers and uncles, the men in a child's life. When I first ventured out to speak to groups, there were virtually no dads in the audience, and I rarely received an email from a dad. With the virulent increase in autism diagnosis and awareness has come the willingness of many male family members to step out of the grief, denial, and fear that often haunts them following a child's diagnosis. They now head support groups, chair fundraisers, write books, produce videos, software and applications, form nonprofit groups, and coach teams so their kids can participate. They come to my talks and they ask piercing questions. Autism. It's not just for moms anymore. Surprisingly, it's been dads who've had the courage to vocalize one of the core insecurities some of us silently confess to ourselves, often with a heavy sidecar of guilt. I can't handle the day-to-dayness of it. Two stories illuminate the can't versus won't attitudes many adults hold about dealing with a child's autism. The characters may be fathers, but the feelings cross all age, gender, and cultural boundaries. I met a dad at the first autism support group meeting I ever attended. He described the meltdowns, the non-responsiveness, the stims, and the food peculiarities. My wife is much better at handling those things than I am. I'm focusing on providing financially for the family and realizing that I must do so for my child lifelong. I'm working on setting that up. My immediate reaction was that his wife was going to be mighty tired. Later, I understood and gave him credit for owning up to his limitations and trying to build constructive compensation. He accepted that his plans and goals as a parent would be different than he originally envisioned them. Not bad, just different. He wasn't in denial of his child's autism, but in the midst of his own grieving process and working through it. Because of that, this dad's can't-handle-it attitude could, in time, evolve into can and will, allowing him to achieve that deeper connection which could make a critical difference in his son's life. Contrast him with another dad I met through a friend, a dad stuck like a broken record on an anti-government rant about how, by mandating vaccines for school attendance, he had been robbed of his son. I simply can't relate to him, he sighed. How do you think it feels to know that he'll probably end up in jail? It's a scary, helpless feeling to be weighed down by regrets and broken dreams. But he had crossed the line from can't, am not able to, into won't, I choose not to, with the decision to look only backward into what might have been, rather than forward into possibilities yet unexplored. Regardless of whether a vaccination is liable for his son's condition, and I won't, choose not to, debate that subject in this book or anywhere else, it's an after-the-fact discussion. The child can't, proper use of the word here, be unvaccinated. By adopting a defeatist attitude rather than the more work-intensive, proactive approach to help his child achieve his full potential, this dad also chose paralysis, fear, exasperation, and self-fulfilling prophecy. His son was 8 years old, a bright, articulate, clever, and resourceful child. He was also aggressive, angry, and frustrated, like Dad. A lifetime of can't messages can plant the germ of despair in a child, or worse. I suggested to this father that he try to reframe can't. Your son can't change that he has autism. He can't find his way to something better unless the adults around him step up to help. I told this father that I knew him to be more capable and caring than that. And I asked him, as my pediatrician used to ask me, who is the adult here? Who has the power to change things? Can you? With help and education, you can be the teacher and guide in your child's life. Will you? He had yet to answer that question for himself. The irony and the poignancy of can't versus won't is that we adults often kill the very thing we want most dearly to achieve. If you yearn for a confident, optimistic, curious, and engaged child, you must model those qualities and you must find and reinforce them in your child, however tiny the increment of gain. Think carefully about the role of reinforcement in your relationship with your child or student. The nuances may be subtle, but the manner in which you respond to your child's actions, words, or attitude amounts to either endorsement or denunciation. Watch what you reinforce. Be sure it's something you want him or her to repeat. When you take on a can-do attitude, he can do too. If you find yourself governed by thoughts such as, I can't give this child special treatment, I can't put extra time into modifying assignments or environments, and I can't do anything about the way this kid is, then you can't expect to see positive changes. Thoughtfully constructing the child's world in a manner that ensures a flow of successes, however bite-sized they may be, builds a foundation that buries the won'ts beneath it. That's not special treatment. It's what we like to think of as the right way. Think back to those pre-Cambrian days before you had a child. You went to a bar after work and called it happy hour or attitude adjustment hour. This isn't much different. You choose to make a conscious shift in your mental state. If you don't like the boozy connotation, think of it as energy resource management. How much time and energy do you expend dwelling on what you don't have and can't have because of your child's autism? That's called brooding. How much could you accomplish if you redirected that energy into doing, trying, and reaching forward? That's called progress.